My name is Ava Reed, and I'm 32 years old. I used to believe my life was perfect: a loving husband, a stunning home, and the security of my father's legacy. But I've come to realize that greed can turn even the closest people into strangers. My story is not just about betrayal, it's about survival and resilience. When my father passed away last year, I inherited his $200 million fortune. It wasn't just money to me, it was his life's work. He built his wealth in the construction industry, creating sustainable housing for low-income families. My father was a man of principles, and his wealth was a tool for change. On his deathbed, I promised to honor his legacy, using the money to continue his charitable efforts. At first, my husband Mark seemed supportive. He had always been the charming, dependable partner I thought I could count on. We lived in a gorgeous estate in Silverwood, a place that felt like a dream. But everything changed after the will was read. Mark, who used to brush off the importance of wealth, suddenly became obsessed. "Ava," he said, his tone calculated, "we could do so much with that money. A vacation home, investments to triple its value. It's just sitting there, doing nothing." I tried to explain to him that the inheritance wasn't about indulgence, it was about purpose. My father trusted me to use it wisely, to make a difference. But every time I refused, the tension between us grew. What I didn't realize was that Mark wasn't just frustrated, he was scheming. The tension in the house became unbearable. Mark's frustration was palpable, and he wasn't alone in his pursuit of the money. His older sister, Kate, entered the picture, a 38-year-old whose bitterness seemed to fuel her every word. Kate was unmarried, financially unstable, and resentful of anyone who had more than she did. "Ava," she said one day, her voice laced with condescension, "you're sitting on a gold mine, and you're too blind to see the possibilities. Do you even know what $200 million can do?" Her words unsettled me, but I brushed them off. Kate's bitterness was nothing new, and I thought I could handle her meddling. That was my first mistake. One evening, I walked into the living room and found Mark and Kate talking in hushed tones. Their conversation stopped abruptly when they saw me. I caught fragments of what they were saying: power of attorney and legal options. When I confronted Mark, he gave me a disarming smile. "You're imagining things, Ava," he said lightly. "You've been under so much stress since your dad passed." I wanted to believe him, to convince myself that I was overreacting. But a seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew quickly. Kate's meddling only intensified. She began showing up at our home unannounced, always with thinly veiled comments about the inheritance. "One person shouldn't have that much money," she said one afternoon, leaning against the kitchen counter. "It's selfish, Ava. Mark has as much right to it as you do. You're his wife." Her words stung, but I stood firm. "It's not about selfishness, Kate. This money is part of my father's legacy, and I'm responsible for honoring it." Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "Legacy," she sneered. "That's a nice excuse to keep it all to yourself." From that moment, the atmosphere in the house grew even colder. Mark and Kate began whispering in corners, their conversations stopping the moment I entered a room. I started locking important documents in a safe in my office, feeling the walls closing in around me. One night, as I reviewed some files in my office, Kate barged in without knocking. "This isn't just about you anymore," she said sharply. "That money belongs to Mark too. You're his wife, for God's sake. Don't you think you owe him something?" I looked her square in the eye. "I owe it to my father to protect this money. It's not about Mark or me. It's about what my father wanted." Her face darkened, and for the first time, I saw something dangerous in her eyes. The tension hit its peak one fateful night. I was alone in the living room, poring over old letters my father had written me. They reminded me of his unwavering belief in doing what was right, no matter the cost. As I sat there, I heard a noise, a sharp crash from the hallway. Before I could react, someone burst into the room. The figure was masked, but I knew exactly who it was. The height, the build, it was unmistakably Mark. He held a chair in his hands, his movements frantic and full of rage. "Mark, what are you doing?" I shouted, backing away instinctively. "You've left me no choice, Ava," he yelled. "You're too stubborn to see reason." He swung the chair toward me, and I tried to dodge, but the impact came too fast. Pain exploded in my head as the chair struck me. I collapsed to the floor, the room spinning wildly before everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed. My head throbbed, wrapped in thick bandages, and my body ached with every small movement. My closest friend, Sarah, was sitting beside me, her face pale with worry. "Hava?" she said softly, gripping my hand. "I found you unconscious and called the ambulance. The police think it might have been a break-in." Her words barely registered as memories of the attack rushed back. It wasn't a break-in, it was Mark. And if Mark was involved, there was no way Kate wasn't part of it too. As I lay in the hospital bed, the pieces began to fall into place. Mark and Kate had orchestrated the attack, disguising it as a random break-in to scare me into compliance. Their greed had reached a breaking point, and they were willing to cross every line to take the inheritance. When the doctor came in to check on me, he asked, "Do you remember what happened during the attack?" I shook my head weakly, playing along. "It's all a blur," I murmured. I decided then and there to pretend I didn't remember anything. If Mark and Kate thought I was too disoriented to suspect them, they would let their guard down. It was the only way I could gather the evidence I needed to expose them. Later that evening, Mark arrived at the hospital. He rushed to my side, putting on a performance worthy of an award. "Ava, thank God you're okay," he said, gripping my hand tightly. His voice was heavy with false concern, but his eyes gave him away. They lacked the warmth of genuine care, replaced by a cold calculation. "I don't remember much," I said quietly, studying his reaction. His shoulders relaxed, and a small, relieved smile crossed his face. "That's okay. The important thing is that you're safe now." Safe. The word felt hollow coming from him. I forced myself to nod, playing the role of the fragile, clueless wife. The next day, Kate visited, carrying a bouquet of flowers and wearing her own mask of concern. "This is just awful, Ava," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Do you have any idea who could have done this?" I wanted to scream at her, to tell her I knew exactly who was responsible. But instead, I shrugged weakly. "Maybe a burglar." Her lips curled into a satisfied smirk. "Well, thank goodness you're okay. That's all that matters." When I was discharged from the hospital and returned home, I noticed subtle but telling changes. Mark and Kate were constantly hovering, acting as though they were looking out for me. But their true intentions were clear. They wanted to control the money. Their schemes became more blatant, and I realized I needed solid evidence to stop them. I began planning my next steps carefully. First, I purchased a small recording device and hid it in my home office, the one place I knew they couldn't resist snooping. Then, I played the part of the confused and fragile wife to perfection. I spent my days appearing dazed, staring blankly at the television, and pretending to struggle with simple tasks. This only made Mark and Kate bolder. One afternoon, I pretended to go out for a walk, but stayed within earshot of the house. Sure enough, as soon as they thought I was gone, they went straight to my office. I crept closer and listened as their conversation unfolded, the recording device capturing every word. "You shouldn't have hit her that hard," Mark hissed. "Now she doesn't remember anything, and we're still stuck." "Don't blame me," Kate snapped. She was supposed to be scared into handing over control, not end up in the hospital. Mark's tone turned cold. "We need to push her harder. She has to sign something, anything, to give me access to the money. If she doesn't, we'll find another way," Kate finished, her voice dripping with malice. Hearing their words made my blood run cold, but I stayed quiet, determined not to give myself away. The recording was clear evidence of their conspiracy and their involvement in the attack. With the recording in hand, I felt a surge of determination. I needed more evidence to ensure there was no escape for Mark and Kate. Over the next few days, I played my role to perfection, acting confused and disoriented while secretly observing their every move. Mark became careless, leaving documents out in the open. One evening, while he was out, I searched his desk and found a folder labeled Trust Fund Revisions. Inside were drafts of legal documents attempting to grant him control over my inheritance under the pretense of financial management. What's worse, I found forged signatures, my own, crudely copied onto these fraudulent papers. I took photos of everything and emailed them to myself, creating a secure digital backup. Kate, meanwhile, kept pressuring me. Ava, you're not thinking clearly, she said one evening. You've been through so much. Let Mark take over the financial responsibilities. He's your husband. You should trust him. Her condescension made my skin crawl, but I nodded along. You're probably right, I said, feigning uncertainty. I'll think about it. That was all she needed to hear. She thought I was finally cracking under the pressure, and it made her reckless. The opportunity for my next move came when Kate insisted on hosting a family dinner. She and Mark wanted to keep me close, but they underestimated my resolve. I brought the same recording device with me, hiding it discreetly in my purse. Over dinner, Kate leaned in close, her voice low and syrupy sweet. Ava, we're just trying to help you. You're under so much stress, and it's clear you can't manage everything on your own. Let Mark take some of the burden. It's the least you can do for him. Her manipulation was infuriating, but I played dumb, smiling weakly. Maybe you're right, I said. I'll consider it. By the end of the night, I had captured more damning evidence of their plans to manipulate me into signing over control of the inheritance. Between the recordings and the forged documents, I finally had enough to expose them. I knew it was time to confront Mark and Kate, but I needed a platform that would leave no room for denial. I decided to host a charity gala in honor of my father's legacy. It was something he had done every year, and this event would be the perfect setting to reveal the truth. For weeks, I worked tirelessly, organizing the gala while maintaining the facade of being vulnerable and unaware. Mark and Kate, thinking they were safe, even offered to help with the arrangements. Their overconfidence would be their downfall. The night of the gala arrived, and the venue was breathtaking. Chandeliers sparkled above a room filled with dignitaries, philanthropists, and close friends of my father. Mark and Kate mingled with the guests, acting as though they were an integral part of my success. It was sickening to watch, but I kept my composure. After dinner, it was time for the main event. I stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, and addressed the audience. Thank you all for being here tonight, I began. This evening is about celebrating my father's vision and the causes he cared deeply about. But before we continue, I have something personal to share, something I believe everyone here deserves to know. The room fell silent as I walked to a large screen set up at the front of the ballroom. I nodded to the technician, and the first recording began to play. The voices of Mark and Kate echoed through the room. I told you hit her too hard, Mark hissed. Don't blame me, Kate snapped. She was supposed to be scared into handing over control of the money. Gasps rippled through the audience as the recording continued. Faces turned toward Mark and Kate, whose expressions shifted from shock to horror. The second recording played, capturing Kate's manipulative words at the family dinner. It's clear you can't manage everything on your own, she said. Let Mark take some of the burden. By the time the recordings ended, the room was abuzz with outrage. Guests whispered furiously, their disgust palpable. Mark tried to step forward, desperation written all over his face. Ava, this isn't what it looks like, he stammered. I ignored him and turned back to the audience. These are the people I trusted most in the world. My husband and his sister conspired to rob me of my father's legacy using lies, manipulation, and even violence. But they underestimated me. I will not be a victim. The final blow came as I held up a legal document. This, I said, is my father's will. It supersedes all other arrangements. Effective immediately, every penny of the $200 million inheritance will be redirected to the charitable organizations my father loved so dearly. Mark and Kate will receive nothing. The audience erupted in applause as Mark and Kate stood frozen, their faces pale with fury and humiliation. The applause from the audience was deafening, but I barely heard it. My eyes were locked on Mark and Kate, who now stood powerless and exposed. Their carefully crafted schemes had crumbled in front of an audience that included some of the city's most influential figures. But I wasn't finished. After the gala, I handed all the evidence, the recordings, forged documents, and testimony from those who had witnessed their manipulation to the authorities. The case against them was airtight, and it wasn't long before the legal system took action. A week later, the police arrived at our house. I stood by the window, watching as Mark and Kate were led out in handcuffs. Mark tried to meet my eyes, his face a mixture of anger and desperation. But I turned away. There was nothing left to say. The courtroom was packed during their trial. The recordings played a central role, alongside the forged documents and testimony from witnesses. Kate, in a desperate bid to reduce her sentence, turned on Mark. She confessed to everything: the staged break-in, the assault, and their relentless attempts to manipulate me into signing over control of the inheritance. Mark sat silently throughout the trial, his once polished demeanor shattered. He looked like a man who had lost everything, and he had. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. Both Mark and Kate were convicted of conspiracy, fraud, and assault. Mark received a 7-year prison sentence, while Kate was sentenced to 5 years. It was the justice I had fought so hard to achieve. With the trial behind me, I turned my focus to rebuilding my life. I sold the estate in Silverwood, a place that had become a symbol of betrayal, and moved to a quieter home surrounded by nature, a space where I could heal. I redirected the $200 million inheritance to the charities my father had loved, supporting causes like housing for low-income families, educational scholarships, and environmental conservation. The impact of those funds reminded me of why I had fought so hard to protect his legacy. One day, I received a letter from Mark. It came from prison and was surprisingly short. He apologized for everything, claiming he had been blinded by greed and pressure from Kate. "I don't expect your forgiveness," he wrote, "but I hope you find peace." I didn't know if his words were genuine or another attempt at manipulation, but it didn't matter. I had already found my peace. His chapter in my life was over, and I was ready to move forward. This experience taught me that betrayal, no matter how devastating, doesn't have to define you. It's possible to take even the darkest moments and turn them into opportunities for growth. I've since dedicated my life to philanthropy, ensuring that my father's legacy continues to touch countless lives. The $200 million that Mark and Kate so desperately tried to steal has become a force for good, and I have found freedom. Freedom from their greed, from their shadows, and from the pain they caused. To anyone who hears my story, remember this: no matter how deep the betrayal, you have the strength to rise above it. Stand firm, fight for what's right, and never let anyone make you feel powerless.